The tech industry is known to be male dominant, with only 1.7% of the workforce being Black women. So that means we experience a lot of biases, but that's not going to stop us from growing our career. Hi, everybody, it's Samantha and Rizel, and we're back with another episode that you don't want to miss on the Deeper Than Tech podcast, where we talk about how to grow our careers in an industry that was not designed with us in mind. We'll be diving deep into this topic, but before we do, if you're loving this podcast, make sure you go on Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. In a previous episode, Rizel talked to us about her experience of wanting to leave tech, and the reason why was because of discrimination, biases, being treated differently on her team. But I'll let her explain it. Do you mind explaining to the people who haven't seen that episode what you experienced?
Yeah, so I was on a software engineering team at a startup, and I did experience a lot of biases as a Black woman. I didn't really know that I was experiencing them. I thought, this is just the way life is. But examples of things are people were like, oh, I know you're just trying so hard because you're a minority. And I was like, whoa. So just weird things where I wouldn't get as much investment in me to learn different projects and stuff like that. They would either give me a really hard project and then be like, you should have been able to do this. Just keep giving me easy ones, and then I couldn't get a chance to grow. Whereas maybe my peers, they had someone sitting down with them and helping them, and everyone was just letting me do my own thing and then not supporting me and then not identifying that's the reason I wasn't doing as well. They weren't setting me up to succeed.
For somebody who may not see these signs, how do you know? It probably took you a while to figure out, hey, they keep giving me easy projects. How can somebody point that out to themselves?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't realize that until what we talked about in the last podcast, is until talking with people. When I started talking with other people, there were people oh, I'm experiencing that too. They're being racist. I'm like, oh, I didn't even consider that. I just thought I was doing my job. Or other people being that shouldn't happen. When I get work, this is what happens for me, da 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 da. So I think talking with other people really reveals a lot.
What are some things that Black women can do to help reduce the bias against them?
I saw this question. I don't know if this is controversial, but I don't know if it's our responsibility to change those biases. I think that's other people. They need to educate themselves and change those biases among themselves. I think for me, one thing that does help us is if we continue to get into more senior roles and be more visible. That way other Black women can see oh, this is something that I can do. And then that way non-Black women will be oh, wow, look at Black women, I guess. But at the same time, I really don't think that's on us. I think it's even hard for us to get into more senior positions and more visible positions if other people have biases about us. That's on them to reevaluate their own biases.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a leadership thing to kind of solve. Isn't it? We can't solve this, right? Biases is going to happen no matter. Since we're 6 months old, we start becoming biased. We're taught it. We're not it's not within us. But I think it starts with leadership. They need to set a good example. Companies do have those bias trainings, but most people don't actually watch those. They just put them on the side and do their other things. Another thing I would say is finding those allies. Because I know when I was trying to get my first promotion, the only way I was able to get it is because I had support from other white men to support me through the process. I couldn't fight that on my own. I needed the help. So not about that I can do as one person, but talking to leadership, making your issues known is key to helping reduce bias. It will never go away, but helping reduce it. Do you have any biases?
Yeah, everybody, you just said at 6 months old, we develop biases. Everybody has biases. I think it, like you said, it happens from learning it from your parents and your environment. And then you just end up having different privileges. So you don't realize oh, I'm privileged. The other people that don't have this privilege, I might be having a bias towards them. That's why I don't think that when people say oh, you have white privilege or whatever, that shouldn't be offensive. It should just be a time for you to evaluate and be oh, how can I use this privilege to help other people? Why do I have this bias? Because the same happens for me, right? Like I have the privilege of having two educated parents, or have the privilege of never, like, always having food to eat. I never went a day hungry. So maybe I won't understand all of those different experiences unless I talk to people and read books and like watch things and educate myself on like people who have different experiences than me, so I don't develop more biases, or I can reduce the biases that I have.
I also have a lot of biases, so I feel you on that one. Why is it important for people to be aware? Like, what good is it going to do?
It's just gonna make you a better person, to be honest, and like be able to relate to people. Like if you're thinking of it in a work sense, if you want to do better at work and be able to communicate with people better and relate with people better, those biases are messing you up. You could be a manager and have a bias towards an employee, and then now your team is not succeeding as well as they could have been because you had a bias against an employee. So like just understanding where they're coming from can help you to grow, can help your team to grow. Yeah.
One of my favorite exercises to do is not use my mouse at all on like a website, and just seeing the struggle that people have and like how some websites are terrible at navigating. I think that's very helpful to kind of put yourself into other people's shoes for a little bit, even though it's like an hour, right, of me trying to navigate without my without my mouse has taught me so much. Like I gotta work on this accessibility thing, so it's important.
I love that. Every software engineer should do that.
Everybody needs to do it. Even if you're not in tech.
Because I watched a video once about them like using like audio to like move through their site. I think it was someone who is visually impaired, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like you have to be like reading each tweet, clicking this. I'm like, wow, this is a lot.
And they're doing that with just their like speaking. I have never heard of this before. That is a new one for me. I didn't know. That's crazy. Okay, I like that. I'm gonna have to try that one out. I wonder what, like, does Mac have that feature? I'm gonna have to check it out, because I know how to turn on the keyboard audio where they speak to you. What is it called? Do you remember what it's called?
Yeah, voice control or something.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if Mac has the
cat's always stepping on my keyboard, and then it's like, oh, it turned on voice control. And then I know GitHub has a feature where you like speak to, it's like a spoken co-pilot feature. Like you speak to it, and then it'll like write out the code for you. So there's different types of things like that.
Yeah, that's cool. Isn't that like GPT-3 or something like that? That new thing that everybody was scared about? Like they're going to take our jobs?
It's leveraging GPT-3.
Everybody was so scared during that time. Oh, my job's going to be gone. But here we are today. How can we get more Black women in tech?
Okay. It's an interesting problem, because I honestly think right now Black women want to be in tech. Some of the barriers are like finances and time, because let's say you're a parent. So I think having more flexible ways and free ways of learning. Like I'm really into free coding boot camps. That's one way too. And then another thing is I actually think, like I said, since we're also, well, a lot of us are interested, the thing is we're in there as like junior developers or maybe even mid-level, but we start to leave once it's getting to like the senior level, C-suite and stuff like that. And I think we need more representation there and more retention there as well. And I think part of that is people being aware of like how they can best support us, how they can best mentor us and invest in us as well. I'm trying to think, I had another thought, but I'll remember it afterwards. But I think some of those things on like retaining the people so that we'll have more representation, more role models, more people to look out for us that look like us, and then also trying to lower those barriers of getting into tech. Because like to learn it, yes, you can learn online, self-taught, but sometimes that's a struggle. And then boot camps cost a lot, and then college costs a lot, and it's a lot of investment in time as well.
Yeah, and those interviews, mostly towards computer science degrees, when you want like maybe going to the FANG class, FANG company. But I don't know algorithms. It's not what I do in my job. Like I don't study it. And that is also a barrier. Like education is also a barrier into a lot of different jobs. You talked about like mid-level and entry level. Are you saying there's not enough Black women who have enough experience to be in these senior roles? Why aren't we up in the C-suite?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily experience. I think sometimes, like you said, like basically you said you had to like get an ally to help you get promoted. Like we don't always have allies with us, so we end up staying in that bubble, and maybe we're getting tired of being there, or like no one's invested in our careers. Sometimes, there's also I read a article like a while back about like the pet to threat thing that happens within Black women. Like sometimes you'll join a company, they infantilize you thinking like, oh, you're a baby, this is all you know, da da da. And then you start to show out, you start to be bomb, and then they start to feel threatened by you and want to keep you down a little bit more. So I think some of those are the reasons why we're not reaching up to C-suite level.
Yeah, and sometimes we just get tired. I'll be honest with you. I want to be staff. That's my personality type is to get to the next level. But I'm tired of fighting. I'm okay with just staying right here because I've worked so hard, but I get so many roadblocks. So it's just like,
yeah, that's why I think that allyship and someone being invested in your career, it will just be easier. Like I don't know if it's that hard for some other people to move up and continue their careers.
Let's talk about moving up. Like, what are some things we can do to protect ourselves against these biases in tech so we can grow?
That's a good question. And I don't know. I don't think I know the answer to that. I did like what you said earlier about like getting that allyship, but I don't know if I know that answer to like how do we protect ourselves against biases. What are your thoughts?
Don't worry about that because I looked this up beforehand. I have a whole list of things that we can do to make sure that you protect yourself against biases. The number one thing is documentation. I know it's a lot of work to document things, but in the long run, it will pay off. Documenting your shout outs, documenting any incidents that happen, and documenting your feelings at this time. A good way to do that is also email yourself so they have timestamps on things just in case like something ever happens, God forgive. So emailing yourself is a great way to keep documentation. Make sure that you have all your stuff together. So we always talked about you have to do work 3 times better to still be behind. So make sure that you're always on your P's and Q's. Don't make sure that the performance is an issue. Just keep working hard. Make sure you speak up. Like the only person you're hurting is yourself. Make sure you find that ally, your manager, somebody to talk to because silence is not your friend and it won't change anything that's happening. Make sure you surround yourself with supporters, like we said, allies, or as people who have the same experiences as you in different races. Always leaning on somebody else. There's ERGs that you can go to talk to. There's Twitter. Find people online that also have the same problems and find somebody who could help mentor you as well. And a mentor is somebody who coaches you on your career and also find somebody who can sponsor you. A sponsor is a little bit different. A sponsor is somebody who always advocates for you when you're not in the room. So make sure you find 2, 3, 10, 100 people who could be your mentor and your sponsor. How are those tips?
I love those. And I feel like I do a lot of them. I was just not thinking of it. I liked, especially speaking up about yourself. I think a lot of times, all people, not just Black women, but like even software engineers were like, I'll let my work speak for myself. And it's like, no, don't do that. Like at my team, I'll be like, guess what I just did this. Cause they're doing their own thing. They're not getting to notice all the work that I'm doing. So I'm like, just spoke here, just did this, just started this. So they know that I'm, up to speed. But yeah, love the tips.
Yet you are the best advocate for yourself. Just pushing out code is not going to get you anywhere. I hate to say this, but you actually have to build relationships. And you can't just stay in your corner and code. You have to go out there. I'm such an introverted person that I'm like, do I really have to do this? So make sure you go promote yourself. Thank you so much again for joining us on another episode of the Deeper Than Tech podcast. Until next time. Bye.